Has doubled down on his plan to take control of Gaza and move Palestinians out of the territory, saying he's committed to buying and owning Gaza. The comments have already provoked reaction from Hamas, which governs Gaza. The group says Palestinians will foil any attempt to displace them. Let's listen to those comments by the president aboard Air Force One.
It's a big mistake to allow people, the Palestinians or the people living in Gaza, to go back yet another time. And we don't want Hamas going back. And think of it as a big real estate site. And the United States is going to own it and will slowly, very slowly, we're in no rush, develop it. We're going to bring stability to the Middle East, to a totally war-torn part of the Middle East. A part of the Middle East that has caused tremendous problem, the Gaza Strip. And we'll own it. It's totally demolished right now. It's a demolition site. It'll be reclaimed. It'll be leveled out, fixed up. There won't be anybody there. Hamas won't be there. We'll be building through other of the very rich countries in the Middle East. They'll be building some beautiful sites for the people, for the Palestinians to live in. They'll be living in harmony and peace, probably for the first time in hundreds of years.
Well, the president's comments come as thousands of Palestinians have been returning to their homes in northern Gaza after the withdrawal of Israeli troops from a key militarised zone that had cut the territory in half. For more than 24 hours now, these live pictures have shown a constant flow of families inching along the road in cars and trucks laden with their possessions. But what many returnees will find is rubble. Around 700,000 people fled their neighbourhoods before Israel's ground invasion following the attack on the 7th of October in 2023 by Hamas. The northern part of the Gaza Strip had been cut off from the south by the Netzarim corridor. The Israeli withdrawal from that strategically important road is part of the current ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas. Well, the BBC, along with other international broadcasters, isn't allowed by Israel to report from inside Gaza. Our Middle East correspondent Yolande Knell is in Jerusalem and spoke to us about President Trump's most recent comments.
This has already caused an awful lot of shock internationally. Really the only international leader that has bought into President Trump's comments are the Israeli ones. We've had the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu calling his idea revolutionary and creative. And there are others, even across the political spectrum in Israel, who, if they've not endorsed this idea, they have expressed some openness to it among Jewish Israeli politicians. But, you know, this has been, again, totally rejected by Palestinians who say that it's tantamount to ethnic cleansing. We have Saudi Arabia coming out once again, a powerful Arab ally of the US, totally rejecting this idea and reiterating its commitment to the long-time international formula for peace, the so-called two-state solution. But a lot of concern about what this could mean for ceasefire talks, because it does seem to have changed the context for those somewhat.
What's the state of those now?
So there is an Israeli negotiating team that has gone along to Doha, Qatar, of course, being this important regional mediator. But while these talks are supposed to move on to discussing the next stage of the ceasefire, which would see a more permanent end to the fighting, the return of remaining Israeli hostages, according to Israeli media, the negotiating team in Doha is not mandated to discuss that at this point. They're waiting in particular for an Israeli cabinet meeting now that the Israeli Prime Minister is back from his trip to Washington. That's expected to take place tomorrow. But, you know, there is a lot of concern among Israelis and Palestinians that things might not progress to this sensitive second stage. Hostage families in particular have been coming out in the past couple of days saying that the scenes that were witnessed on Saturday when these 3 Israeli hostages were returned looking emaciated. They have talked about other hostages that they were held with that remain in desperate conditions in Hamas tunnels, and they're saying that they desperately want to bring all of the hostages home. They're worried that that could be jeopardized. Palestinians, many people are also, of course, very worried about the possibility of a return to fighting.
Yolande Knell in Jerusalem. China has imposed retaliatory tariffs on the United States, targeting $14 billion worth of goods, triggering fears that the world's two largest economies are on the brink of a trade war. Beijing promised the tariffs last week after Donald Trump announced a 10% levy on all products entering the US from China. Our China correspondent Laura Bicker explains what the authorities in China are saying about why they chose this particular response.
Well, China has imposed tariffs of 15% on US coal and US liquefied natural gas, and also a 10% levy on crude oil and large vehicles and also agricultural machinery. Now, when it comes to the official response, China's foreign ministry has not wavered in the last 2 weeks. It has said repeatedly that it does not, it opposes these tariffs, and also that it would like Washington to negotiate and enter dialogue. That has been the repeated message from the foreign ministry, and it was repeated again today in the latest briefing. I think what we're seeing is the tariffs that Beijing has imposed will have a very limited impact on American firms. It seems designed, it seems calculated to form a response that says, yes, we will fight back. However, we're also leaving the door open to negotiate. We're also leaving the door open for talks. So it does seem China wants to enter talks, wants to do a deal. But so far, last week we heard that the two leaders were going to talk. We heard from the White House spokesperson that there was going to be a call between President Xi and Donald Trump. That call did not happen. Now we're waiting and we're wondering, does Donald Trump respond to these retaliatory tariffs? Does the US and China go tit for tat on tariffs from here on in? Or will there be some sort of negotiation in the future?
You mentioned whether they'll go for tit for tat. That would escalate things further. I mean, to what extent is China giving it away what its tactics would be if the US retaliated again?
I think certainly what I've been hearing from analysts, from professors, is that China feels ready for this trade war. They've been preparing for this since they knew Donald Trump might become president. There are certain aspects of Beijing's economy that has changed. China is not the same as it was when Donald Trump was first president. It has diversified. It now has more global trade partners. It is the lead partner for 120, lead trade partner for 120 countries, including right across the global south, from Africa, Latin America, and also Southeast Asia. So China will feel as if it is in a more robust situation. It is not as reliant on exporting to the United States than it was before. However, having said that, China's own economy is struggling. Growth, they say, certainly according to its own official figures, the economy is still growing, but at a far slower rate than it has done in the last few centuries. So when we look at where China's economy is now, it is facing a number of significant challenges. Beijing may feel that it won't want to fight a trade war. Even if it feels it could, it may not want to add a US-China trade war to those list of economic troubles.